think as a young child I was always keen on building things, and I guess I've never grown up. I always enjoyed making things. So the sense of architecture being a manufacturing process of construction and so on has been part of my, I suppose, conscious existence since I was about 12. I guess aligned with that, I've always enjoyed drawing and expressing myself through drawing. So aligning making things and drawing them, generally speaking, characterises why architects are as they are. I studied in Melbourne at RMIT, which is the Institute of Technology, and then at the Melbourne University.
Le Corbusier, the French-Swiss architect, a marvellous visionary person and also a hands-on architect with marvellous sculptural and painterly qualities as well, set a degree of images that we've responded to. On the other hand, in the teaching model, a man called Walter Gropius, the great German educator, I think has had a remarkable impact on the education of architects and the carriage of architecture right throughout the last 40, 50 years. Yeah, passion's a strong enough word for me. Commitment is another. Dedication is another. I don't think that you can tackle a profession like architecture without having some of those qualities, because at the root of architecture there's a spiritual register, which most clients come wanting some vision beyond that which they might have themselves. There is in some of modern day architects in Japan, people like Isazaki, people like Maki, who are superb architects in my view. Each of them very different, each of them dealing with Japan on different values, but nevertheless dealing in both universal and particular qualities. So they're dealing in universal ideas, but one can still identify them as Japanese architects. Now, I think that's an amazing proposition, and I would hope still to be identified as an Australian architect, at the same time as I want Australian architecture to deal with universal ideals. In a community that's had to run very hard at building things from primary values, we call it in domestic architecture a stick-like style, where every stick has to count. So it's, and it is a structuralist idea that I think you can find running through Australian architecture from its most primitive mud brick and wattle and daub kind of primary pioneer cottage to a more sophisticated series of buildings like city towers and so on, where there is a structuring expressed in the building. Okay, well, I mean, this is an old warehouse for a start, and we looked for a space in the city that had a degree of openness about it, that it really allowed all the team to be in various places around it, so that those who are in the team get to feel part of the organisation. I don't have a specific set office here myself. This is my office, the whole place. And so I'm inclined to roam around from one drawing board to another, working with the team or having the team come to my table and sit down with me to work together. The cricket ground is an elliptical ground, which really means that it's not like a circle which has one centre. An ellipse has many centres. And it's only really in a digitalised process that one is able to get all those centres onto the field of the plan as easily as we were able to do it. If we'd had to do it manually, then we'd have been looking at many different compass points and plotting that curve, which in an ellipse, you know, tightens up at one edge and bellies out at another in another kind of way. So the sense of what this kind of gear can do is an amazing revolution in the way in which architects can work. So at a thing like the cricket ground, fairly obviously it has to be a robust kind of building to deal with the next 100 years maybe of occupancy. It's a building that needn't be pristine like a hotel or sanitary like a hospital. It's a public amenity of a sports kind. So you'll find on that building trusses that are very muscular, tensioned up, concrete used fairly aggressively, fairly assertively, to express the dynamics and, if you like, the tension that's in sport. Here in Melbourne, the southern stand for the Melbourne Cricket Ground would be one of the largest public buildings that we've had the opportunity to make. That's about 45,000 spectators in close to the ground, and
Then an office building we've just finished is really just outside us here in the city. It's 120 Collins Street, and it's a 55-storey commercial tower based right in the centre of Melbourne. I suppose you'd have to say the establishment of a new university in Queensland, the Bond University, would be the largest physical thing that we've done. And that involved really taking 250 acres of broad landscape and placing a new university in it, including student housing, sort of public housing, and university facilities and so on. We were not the only architects. We were the master planners, and then there were 4 or 5 local architects and a Japanese architect, Arata Sasaki, was involved in that, and so he came out, and it's part of that joint venture arrangement between Australian companies and Japanese companies that he was working for one of the Japanese financial houses that was participating in the development of the university. There are always going to be people in society who have a capacity to extend our vision. Sometimes their vision may not have an application to a project that someone like me might be doing. So, and also to the way in which society works. And usually new things are a juxtaposition between the politics of the city, the way in which the polis and the community want things to happen, and the way in which the technologists and the visionaries draw it together.